Upon the request of the Prachetas, um, upon the request of the Prachetas to Narad Muni for guiding them forward, and they were very clear that they didn't want any kind of material benediction, but they wanted to be enlightened in transcendental knowledge so that they may cross the darkness of material existence. So Narad Muni gets straight to the point. This is the part one of Narad Muni's instructions, where the focus goes to the fact that devotional service is the goal of all spiritual practices. And this section contains some of the most important verses, not only of this chapter, but all of Srimad Bhagavatam. And you would find one particular verse which had been either directly quoted or explained as an analogy by Srila Prabhupada so many times. So Narad Muni wanted the Prachetas to focus on something which is more tangible, not just matter. And just like Narad Muni himself is always absorbed in the thoughts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and always carrying the mood of pleasing the Supreme Lord through the process of devotional service, he likewise wanted to redirect the thought and attention of the Prachetas to the highest goal of life, which is to please the Supreme Lord by performing devotional service. So Narad Muni, he says that many living entities, they are born in this world, and there are three basic kinds of births. The first kind of birth is that which is the traditional sort of birth, which is from father and mother, which is birthed by semen. And then the next birth takes place when one becomes initiated by the spiritual master. And that birth is for Savitra. And then the third birth takes place when one gets an opportunity to worship Lord Vishnu, and that is called Yagika. So essentially, these two births correspond to Harinam Diksha and Brahman Diksha within our society that Srila Prabhupada has established, or the standard that Srila Prabhupada has established. So one's activities may be mundane or spiritual, but Narad Muni is pointing out they are after all useless if they are not meant for satisfying the Supreme Lord. And this purport to verse number 10 is very important purport, where Prabhupada is talking about how the Krishna consciousness of an aspiring devotee is facilitated by awarding that person the position of a Brahmana. So it's a long purport, but we'll try to pick some section. In this age of Kali, everyone is Shudra due to the absence of the Garbhadhan Sanskar. This is the Vedic system. According to the Pancharatrika system, however, even though everyone is a Shudra due to the absence of the Garbhadhan Sanskar, not Garbhadhan Sanskar, if a person has but a little tendency to become Krishna conscious, he should be given the chance to elevate himself to the transcendental platform of devotional service. Our Krishna consciousness movement adopts this Pancharatrika Vidhi as advised by Srila Sanatana Goswami. And then he quotes the famous verse, which is often quoted during initiation, that as the bell metal, when mixed with mercury, is transformed to gold, a person, even though not golden pure, can be transformed into a Brahmana or Dvija simply by the initiation process. Thus, if one is initiated by a proper person, he can be accepted as twice born immediately. In our Krishna consciousness movement, we therefore offer the student his first initiation and allow him to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. By chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra regularly and following the regulative principles, one becomes qualified to be initiated as a Brahmana. Because unless one is a qualified Brahmana, he cannot be allowed to worship Lord Vishnu. So this is sort of emphasizing the importance of the Brahman initiation. And then after speaking this important message where Narad Muni categorizes the three kinds of births, then Narad Muni condemns even spiritual practices that fall short of directing one's consciousness to Krishna. And then basically pointing out that serving Lord Krishna or Lord Hari with devotion is the only valuable attainment. Everything else is just a useless waste of time. So 11th and 12th verses, he's pointing that out, that without devotional service, what is the meaning of severe austerities, the process of hearing, the power of speech, the power of mental speculation, elevated intelligence, strength, and the power of the senses? Transcendental practices that do not ultimately help one realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead are useless. Be they mystic yogic practices, the analytical study of matter, severe austerity, the acceptance of sannyas, or the study of Vedic literature. All these may be very important aspects of spiritual advancement, but unless one understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, all these processes are useless. You can see how strong Narad Muni is in this section. Prabhupada, in this context, gives the example of a vulture. Prabhupada, in different lectures, you probably have heard this analogy, that a vulture is generally possessed with a strong power of vision. And vulture's power of vision is so strong that the vulture can fly up in the sky, and 7-8 miles above the sky, the vulture can still see very clearly. So vulture's vision is oftentimes compared to the different varieties of advancement in education, science, technology, and so on and so forth. So Prabhupada points out that the vulture in this way rises very, very high and carries a very sharp vision. But with that sharp vision, what does he do? He just spots a dead carcass or a dead body, and that's what he cares about. So likewise, when we may develop tremendous amount of qualification, whether material qualification or spiritual qualification, if our goal is not properly set to focus on Lord Hari, then that rising high in the sky is practically useless. That's what Narad Muni is pointing out here. So he's saying that factually, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the original source of all self-realization. Consequently, the goal of all auspicious activities, karma, jnana, yoga, and bhakti, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in the purport number 13, no, purport number 12, sorry. Purport number 12, Prabhupada is bringing out that devotional service is in the heart of all processes. That impersonalists do not take to devotional service, but take to other practices, such as the analytical study of the material elements, the discrimination between matter and spirit, and the mystic yoga system. These are beneficial only insofar as they are complementary to devotional service. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore told Sanatana Goswami that without a touch of devotional service, Gyan, Yoga, and Sankhya philosophy cannot give one the desired results. The impersonalists wish to merge into the Supreme Brahman. However, merging to the Supreme Brahman also requires a touch of devotional service. That's interesting. The absolute truth is realized in three phases: impersonal Brahman, Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All these require a touch of devotional service. Sometimes it is actually seen that these Mayavadis also chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, although their motive is to merge into the Brahman effulgence of the Absolute. The yogis also at times take to chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, but their purpose is different from that of the bhaktas. In all processes, karma, jnana, or yoga, bhakti is required. That is the purport of this verse. And in the context of verse number 13, where it is pointed out that ultimately the Supreme Personality of Godhead should be the goal of all activities. So Sridhar Swami poses a question that how can the results of all spiritual activities other than bhakti to Lord Hari be considered worthless? And he uses Narad Muni's response as an answer to that question, that Lord Hari, who is the super soul, is the highest possible goal for all auspicious activities. And that is because Lord Hari is more dear than anyone or anything. And therefore, whatever else is dear or pleasing is only because it is dear to the Supreme Lord. And therefore, Lord Hari is considered to be the supreme object of all auspicious activities. And Lord Hari is also dear to all because he himself, or he gives himself in his most opulent form, like an offering to his devotee. So he's ready to give himself. So 2 points that are mentioned is that one is that the Lord Hari is the dearest of all. And therefore, whatever else might be pleasing, it's only pleasing because of the Lord Hari's pleasure. And the second is that the Supreme Lord is pleasing or dear to all because he gives himself as an offering to his devotee. And then finally, Narada Muni gives in this section this very, very important example, or two examples, that Yatha Tarur Mula Nishechanana, that particular verse. It is a very, very often sort of quoted verse. And this analogy is all over the place in Srila Prabhupada's books, that as pouring water on the root of a tree energizes the trunk, branches, twigs, and everything else, and as supplying food to the stomach enlivens the senses and limbs of the body similarly, simply worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotional service automatically satisfies the demigods who are parts of that Supreme Personality. So in this text to verse number 14, Srila Prabhupada explains how devotional service is the essence of all good works. So he says that modern society is involved in various types of philanthropic works, humanitarian works, and so on. But people do not know that these activities will never be successful unless Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is brought into the center. And then he says that one may ask What harm there is in worshipping Krishna and the different parts of his body, the demigods? And the answer is also given in this text. So this is a different question that people may ask, that, okay, what's the problem? Like, I can do both. So Srila Prabhupada is writing, the point is that by supplying food to the stomach, the indriyas, the senses, are automatically satisfied. If one tries to feed his eyes or ears independently, the result is only havoc. So this is the counterpart of this verse that Srila Prabhupada is elaborating on. Simply by supplying food to the stomach, we satisfy all of the senses. It is neither necessary nor feasible to render separate service to the individual senses. In other words, even if one is going after demigod worship, if Krishna is not put in the center, that is actually practically useless, or it can only create havoc. The conclusion is that by serving Krishna or Krishna Seva, everything is complete. As confirmed in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Bhakti Koile Sarva Karma Krita Hai. If one is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything is automatically accomplished. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.